Hey, hello, punters, and welcome to the Harder Shaft podcast. And today we're going to be talking about something that I think at this stage in our lives and at this time in history is really important. That's accountability. That's the part of us that takes responsibility for what we choose to do without blaming or inflicting any concerns onto anyone else but ourselves. And who else to actually talk about this wonderful topic but the expert himself, Adam Cox. Coxie, how are you?
Hey, good mate. How you going?
I'm good. I saw this topic and I just thought, yeah, this is a
Mm,
Coxie topic,
yeah, it's so
you know?
interesting actually because when you said it through to me, I was like, okay, yeah, okay, let's go with this.
Because we can sort of look at it through relationships, but we can also look at it through ourselves. And so I guess before we start, how would you define, accountability?
um, I think I feel like it's kind of it's got the basis in the integrity as well. It's kind of following through with what you say that you will do and being accountable. And I feel like that there's two parts of the accountability. Um, I mean, these are very broad, but one is accountability to self, and the other is accountability to someone else.
Okay.
And they look a little bit differently. And that someone else could be a business, or it could be a partner, or it could be a friend, or there's lots of different roles that someone could take.
Yeah, when I
Um,
was looking the topic up, there's all these whole list of accountabilities for all these different things. But I
mm,
think, you've summarized it really well. Just,
mm,
self and to someone else or something
yeah,
else, rather
mm,
than having, corporate accountability and all this stuff. It just goes on. And the list was really long, but you just got to understand, what do I need to do for me and what do I need to do for something else, right? Is that how you
mm,
see it?
mm, yeah,
Okay. And what is
yeah,
the accountability part of it? Is it just, do you call it responsibility or?
yeah. Responsibility is definitely in there, but I think it is coming down to that space of self at all times. You are essentially being accountable to your own self. And, this is a really, ownership is also a really big part of it. I think the thing to really identify from all of this is that we're all going to fuck up at some point in our life. And
Yeah.
it's not about getting it perfect. It's not about getting it right. It's not about, you know, yeah, it's not about having this picture perfect kind of you know role where we're like, okay, it has to be like this. It's being able to show up with the best intentions and the best efforts, because we're all navigating a whole bunch of different stuff at any given time. And then
Mm.
there's that level of being able to show up and say, hey, you know what, this is what I did, and I can also see that, what, I fell short here or I fell short there, and that's
Yeah.
somebody taking that ownership for that. Obviously, there is that accountability for how that plays out, but yeah.
I totally love that. But again, I'm just throwing it out there because what I see, and you probably
Mm,
see bits of it too. Why do you think there's a lot of struggle with some guys taking on that second part? That, I stuffed up part rather than,
mm,
I've noticed there's a lot of projection and blaming, right?
yes,
I
yes.
know that it's part of our thing at the moment in the world, but
Mm.
is there a particular reason why you think some people go to that first and going to what you've said? Is that experience, you think?
Yeah, look, I think it's pinned into the into a societal kind of level, and this is again just my perspective, and I'm super happy to be
Yeah.
wrong or to be proven otherwise. But I feel like, especially in the society and the culture that I grew up in, that there was an expectation to behave and to do and say things in a certain way, you know, and that level is it's punished if you don't get it right. It's punished if you get it wrong. You're told by getting told that you're a good boy or a good girl or a good person or whatever like that. It's like, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. And as soon as you're not, oh my God,
Yeah.
that's so wrong. And there's this shame and how dare you and what will the neighbors think and all these kinds of things. So it's it's not encouraged for somebody to come through and say, "Hey, oh, I screwed up on that. I didn't take ownership of that, or sorry, I didn't do that to the fullest of my ability, or I really slipped up there." because for a lot of people, their nervous system is still living as that 5-year-old or that 10-year-old, that
Yeah.
had some sort of experience from their past that said, you know what, it's actually not safe for you to do that because
Mm.
last time you did that, you got punished and you got in trouble. So better let's just squash it.
Well, can I tell you a funny story? When I was at the age of what you're describing, I got punished for doing it right.
For doing it right.
Yeah, like I had this group of, I don't understand why, but I had this group of cousins and an aunt was the one that led it. That every time I did something right, I would get teased for being, Miss Pollyanna, Miss Perfect.
Oh, right. Yes,
And
yes, yes, yes.
so
Okay.
I really struggled, and I purposefully tried to find ways to do it wrong because I wanted to
Mm.
be accepted. So it was a really quite a weird thing. So I would get like an A at school, and her son and daughter would get not an A, and so
Mm.
that's the way that they dealt with that.
Yeah, fascinating, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like you can't win.
no.
It's kind of like
Well, it's
the
embarrassing.
yeah, that's a little bit of like that tall poppy syndrome kind of thing. It's like be good, but don't be too good. Like
Yeah,
go after the things you want, but don't
but
shine
don't
too
show
bright.
off. Yeah,
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 you
yeah.
know.
Like, it was that they because I did well at school. It was like there was like no room for them to think I was failing, but I was failing in other areas of my life, right?
Mm.
But they were focusing on grades, and so do you remember that show Prisoner? Right, and so Prisoner was out, that show Prisoner, and there's a song that came out at the end of each episode, and it's a really, really that's the song that they stuck to me,
Okay.
and it was just this whole sort of
Yeah. Wow.
stuff, yeah, so it's interesting, it can work both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally see that playing out.
Yeah, and I guess back then I didn't know how to be accountable and say to them, you know, "Piss off." I didn't know how to say that.
Mm. Well, accountability really comes into a pre-conversation. I feel. It's about setting down the, let's call it the level of expectation, but setting down the rules about, okay, these are the things that need to happen. If it's in a business environment, then everyone's got roles and set of jobs and tasks that they're going to be doing. If it comes down
Mm,
to a relationship, then there's also, accountability for following through on things you said that you're going to go and do. Right. And holding yourself accountable, but also being able to hold somebody else accountable,
yeah.
another level that comes into
Well,
that.
can I talk about the other thing? What if both parties both think that they're being accountable correctly, but yet the other person doesn't think that that's being accountable? You know what I mean? What do you do if someone says, "Hey, but I am doing that," but the other
Mm,
person's definition of accountability is different to them?
mm, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Look again. Yeah, yeah. It's a great question, and I feel that comes back to again the setting it up. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I can see that your version of accountability is different to my version of accountability. Right? It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just what is. So it would be best for both parties or whoever's involved, no matter what situation it is, to look at and say, okay, well, what's the where are we meeting on this?
Mm,
Because if you can't meet on that in the very beginning, then it's kind of doomed to fail and problems are going to ensue.
yeah. Is it like is it about boundaries sort of stuff? Boundaries of how you listen and talk to each other and define things, sort of, or a bit
Uh,
more than that?
uh, yeah, I mean, I guess there's probably there's so many deeper conversations that we could have off all of this, but um, yeah, it's really just checking in with one another, and I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that comes through from all of this when dealing with, and this is for any conversation, but also with accountability, is just treating some people with love and kindness
Mm,
and with a little bit of curiosity, and not judging and not blaming and not criticizing and pointing the finger.
yeah.
But how can you approach any conversation,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And
can I give
in
you a
this
quick
case,
example? Quick
yeah.
example is that I've got is a friend of mine moved in with someone into their house, right? So
Hmm.
the accountability of the way the house should be held was based around the person that lived there first, rather
Hmm.
than making the accountability about the couple, right?
Hmm.
So every time that something was brought up, it was as if it was this is my house, but
Hmm.
instead of saying this is our house. Right,
Hmm.
so they had to sort of do what you're suggesting, and that is have a chat and talk about meet in the middle. Hey, hold on a
Mm.
second. This is no longer your house, so no longer. your rules really apply. It's now our
mm,
rules.
mm,
So it's sort of just understanding that, I guess, and also in that situation, the person that lived in the house first was very fixated with thinking that they were right,
yes. Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than being flexible. So that's just one simple example.
Totally, totally. And that's hard to give up for some people because they become attached to things being in a certain way, and it really does. It becomes imperative for anybody else that would join that house in this instance to speak up their truth and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
this is what I've noticed." Right?
Mm. It's
Again,
it's funny how
it's
people don't consider that. That
mm,
like so many people that I know personally that move in with someone without even talking about what it's like to move in with this person.
mm,
They just
yeah,
imagine it being fantastic, right?
yeah, yeah,
So it is interesting how accountability to ask those questions is really important because otherwise you're just going to be upset or sad if it doesn't work out.
mm,
And it's like you may blame the other person, but really you didn't do the work, didn't you? You didn't actually follow up and say, hey, what does it look
mm,
like to live with you? Do you
mm,
like pets? Do you like this? Do you like that? Because
mm,
in reality, I think sometimes we make those. I mean, again, I used to, and I know lots of people that make spontaneous decisions without
yeah,
following through and finding out.
yeah.
Is accountability fall under that as well, or is it not really?
Mm, I don't. Yeah, I feel like accountability is probably a little bit more related to an action, um, and and saying, right, you're depending on somebody for something. You're giving your word. You're being
Yeah,
there and saying, hey, you need to be accountable to somebody else, and you also need to be accountable for yourself for following through on the things that you said that you're going to do.
yeah, okay,
And it's super
and
important.
yeah, and are there any like if we look at goals, for example, let's just make it micro. If
Yeah.
being accountable to say a goal and listening to what you've said and honoring that, would
Mm.
there be in your mind some simple steps, or what would be one or two, three steps so you can really follow through on that? How do you manage that accountability if you set a goal for yourself?
Yeah. Really good question. Um, Writing it down, putting it somewhere where you can actually see it and visualize it. Because as every person goes through life, there is a myriad of impulses and desires that are going to show up at any given moment. And if there's no anchor point for a person to return to and to continue looking at the things that are important, then
Yeah.
it's easy to get lost in a world of distraction. So
So
it's
write it
super
down
important.
just somewhere where you can go and revisit it.
Yeah, revisit it.
Yeah.
Secondly, is share it with at least one person, but share it with a multiple.
Oh,
Share it with a group of people. Share, hey,
okay.
this is the thing that I'm going to go and do.
So can
And
I
what
ask,
the
because
mm,
that's the first time I've heard that, and I like that. But a lot of
mm,
people say, don't say something until you know what you're doing, right?
mm,
So it's interesting how I like your version because sometimes you sort
mm,
of want to share it with someone, and maybe that's a part of being, what people told you when you're growing up. Don't brag, don't tell anyone what you're doing,
mm,
just in case it
mm,
doesn't work out. Where you're sort of saying it's okay to share, which I love because I've been told multiple times not to say something until it's
mm.
definite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Like, and here's the thing. I mean, it's what's effective, right?
Yeah,
Is what's right and what's wrong is all about what we choose to decide what's right and wrong, and what we should do
yeah,
and what we shouldn't do. But when it comes down to, um, especially when it comes down to accountability, it's usually to have accountability to do something that typically might not come so naturally,
right,
right?
okay,
So, for example, um, when I was, partying most weekends, and I don't know how many times I broke promises to myself. I'm like, I'm not going to drink or I'm not going to take drugs this weekend, and I would end up out, 24 hours, 48 hours, and I would continue to break that, and I was breaking the accountability to myself and to my partner, and that was a challenge, and I didn't really speak too much about it. I kept it hidden, and the danger of keeping it within is that most often we actually need support,
yeah,
right? And it's that moment when you can share with someone and say, okay, this is the thing that I'm going to commit to, right? I'm going to commit to this for 14 days, or I'm going to commit to this for 30 days, or whatever that thing is. Set yourself a goal that is a stretch for you, not a mammoth goal, but something that is going to stretch you. And just so you can revisit and you know that at the end, there's an opportunity for you to take some breathing space. So you know you've got that level.
I love it.
The part about that works so effectively is that when you're having a shitty day and when, you know, just say it's maybe even going to the gym, let's stick with the example. My case, if I was feeling like, I wanted to go and have a drink or go and take drugs, I could call one of these people and say, hey, the desire is showing up. And they'd go, yeah, how are you
Okay.
feeling right
And
now?
you
What's
would and
going
you
on
would
for you?
you would feel that would be enough to make you not do it?
Well, it just puts it into a space where it feels safe to be seen and you don't have to go through that mode of internalization,
Yeah.
because that's a spiral that then starts of the person then starting to go, oh, well, oh God, it's so hard and why am I like this? And all the questions that come up that are actually ineffective for
I
finding
like that.
the solution. It's just
Yeah.
being met with human connection. And someone could say, okay, so for example, what is going to have a drink for we do? Oh, I've had a shitty week and I just want to de-stress. Okay, cool. Is there something else that you could do besides drinking that would allow you to de-stress and so that when you wake up tomorrow morning, you're going to be able to go to the gym and you're actually going to have a fresh day and be able to go and do some of those things that you said you're going to do. That, it might not be good now, but
Yeah.
like just think of some of those things. And that person can just like relay back to you and say, hey, what about this? And what about this? And what about
Yeah.
this? And what about this? It gives you an opportunity to not have to hold the whole thing and allow yourself to receive some
Yeah.
support.
So that bit there, do you think, right, that you need to find a
Mm,
particular person, or do you believe anyone can do that?
mm. Yeah, it's
So I'm just asking because I know the listeners will probably be thinking that.
totally, totally. Use discernment for sure. You want to find somebody that um, has an ability to love you and care for you, and also be the unreasonable friend to say the things
Yes.
that they don't want to hear.
Yes.
Right?
Um,
That's the ideal kind of person.
yeah, the person that's gonna just tell it to you without worrying about how you feel or
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think,
So,
we all need one of those, don't we?
100%. Most of my friends are like that. It's like, oh, I can't hide.
Unless people are scared of you and then no one will tell you off.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I'll share this with you because this is a little story. So, this is going back. This is going to be 4 years, 5 years ago, I reckon. And there was this 30-day course that I'd signed in for, and you had to do a video every single day. And I'd started it and I'd fallen off, and I'd started it and I'd fallen off, and I started it and I'd fallen off. I was like, right, I've got to create some accountability for myself to do this start to finish. And I'm going to do every video, every part. All right. So I decided that I would do a couple of things. Number one, I set myself something that was a bit of a stretch for me, but also I knew that at the end of 30 days, I'm all good. Number two, I created a group of people. Now, at the time, I put it out to Facebook and I said, hey, I would like, I'm creating a group of people that will be able to support me through this. I said, this is actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach you what I learned every single day in the group. So not only am I being accountable to you, but I get an
Wow.
opportunity to teach this, right? So it worked out kind of well. And the third thing, which is, look, depending on how somebody's nervous system is at the time, and this is something that I would really just, I put into caution. Somebody who's in a really huge state of survival instinct or a fight or flight, or, really going through a lot of stuff with maybe intense anxiety, this
Mm,
might not actually be effective because it's only going to incite
amplify it.
more of that to happen. So I want to just put that out there. But I also put a little caveat in there to say that if I didn't show up every single day for the 30 days with the teaching and sharing it in the group, then my promise was that I had to go to Dreamworld and ride the giant drop all day long. And I just needed to go and ride the giant drop and then queue up again and ride the giant
Oh
drop.
my gosh.
Now, I don't like queues, and the giant drop, like roller coasters, I'm fine with. Giant drop, not so much.
No.
And the point of this, and this is the part where it can work really, really well, is that when you create a um, a more or less a punishment, but it has to come from the self, right? Someone that you choose. If the pain of the punishment is more extreme than the pain of actually doing something, and you have a group of people that can actually hold you accountable to that,
Yeah.
and at that moment of weakness where you just want to give in and you're like, oh, I'm so tired, I don't want to do that right now. I want to go to the gym, or I really want to drink, or I really want some cake, or I really, I don't want to, whatever it is, that whole desire, when desires catch you.
Does that happen to you a lot?
Um, Desires catch me all the time. I'm better.
Because
I'm better
because
now at being able to
you're probably one of the most organized people that I know personally. I know that you tell these stories and I believe you, but, like,
Mm.
I feel that you're really quick at finding these ways to get catch yourself from slipping.
Oh,
You've got that skill, but do you find yourself sometimes where you don't do it at all?
oh, yeah, yeah. This is a
Okay.
big work in progress. This is actually a big work in progress stuff for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Because
So,
'cause how you write lots and you all your stuff's
mm,
original. That must take a lot of
mm,
time. So you obviously
not
have a system
not
to be
really.
accountable. Yes, it's easy for you, isn't it? That's the thing I keep forgetting. It's easy.
I just write this stuff in 10 minutes, and then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's done.
Okay. Okay. So let's just drop that idea. So there are certain things that people can do really quickly. There's other things like the videos you probably needed the group, which I think is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, things like, I'll actually play games with myself, at the moment. So I'll say, right, what topics would you like to have? Well, I think it was a week or two ago. I put out, I was like, right, what topics would you like me to speak upon? And I just went and created a whole bunch of videos. And to be honest, I look at some of those videos and I'm like, oh, they're terrible,
No, they're
right?
not.
And yeah, and here's the thing, right? It's like my own judgment's there, but it's done,
Mm. And
right?
you
It's
did it
done.
quickly, very quickly.
Yeah. I just went in there and I went, okay, cool. And I sat down, I got a couple of outfits, I stuck in one place, and it was probably within an hour I had recorded, maybe there's going to be 10 to 15 little bite-sized ones that I'll actually use. Some I'll go through and record again, right? And the point is that done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
And the only way that I'm going to get better at recording and making videos is
Is to
by
do it.
recording and making videos. And so
Yes.
the accountability works because I set myself up with a little group,
Yeah.
subconsciously I kind of knew what was going on. I was like, okay, well, if I said that I'm going to do this now, I've got to follow through on that.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
did. And there's the self accountability.
I've just signed up to do a Course in Miracles. Have you heard of that? You know
I
the
have, I have heard of that.
so I got the book, right, and I've had the book in
Mm.
my bookshop. It's too hard to do on your own. Because
Right.
it's 365 days worth of lessons, right? So
Wow.
I just discovered there was a place online where you just put your email address in, and every morning at 7 o'clock, they send
Mm.
you an email, and that's the accountability. And it's so much easier getting the
Mm.
email, doing it at 7, reading it,
Yeah.
it's done, versus me having to
Mm.
pick up a book. So sometimes
Yeah.
looking for things that make the accountability easier, it's okay, because sometimes it's hard for us to do things, especially something that intense, because it's a very
Mm.
intense course.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the other part around this that I'd like to just play in, if I can steer this into a little bit of a different direction. There is a very, and this is a generalization, by all means. I'm not going to say this is across the board, but there is a generalization where people have traded in their soul for effectiveness, and they have become slave to a system. They've become slave to a structure. They've become slave to obligation in getting shit done, and they've sold themselves in the process of doing it. Now,
So could you
is it
expand a bit more? Like
effective?
sell themselves meaning they lose their own desires or their own wishes, or
Yeah, look, people. It's clear to see that the way that we, um, that in a general sense, the way the world is looking at their own health and well being, um, isn't effective. More people are getting
mm,
sicker than they have than ever before. We've got suicide rates going up. We've got mental health rates going up. Right. This is clear to see that there's something actually wrong with the whole approach.
yeah,
Right. It's not about the individual. This is a collective thing. We've got to have a look at, like, what the fuck's actually been going on in the world. And my perspective of it is that we have put too much into the be accountable, get shit done, keep going, keep going,
Yeah.
keep going, keep going,
No,
which
you're
is
right.
great and it's effective. But also, at what point did we forgo someone's own well-being to go, hey, you know what? Hey Joey, how are you feeling today? Do you know what? Today I'm feeling really tired. And too often we have been told to push through. Too often we have been told to just get on with it and to keep going and to stay accountable, to do all those things and to not actually nurture the human being that's behind all of the doing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's missing.
Yeah.
And so, does it create a little bit of a gap in the accountability and the effectiveness? Yes, it does. But in terms of human beings being here on this planet and what we get to do in terms of our own health, well being, and how we communicate with one another, well, then that starts to shift
Yeah.
when we start to go, you know what? How are you feeling today? You know what? I really, really need a day off. Okay.
Mm.
Take a day off. Really? Can I do that, Nick? Like, people are like, what are you
Listeners, do you sometimes feel that he's
doing?
talking directly to you? Because that's how I feel. Well, it's funny how just in the last 3 weeks I've changed my diet completely. Like I've just totally changed. I've removed all sugars, all processed foods, and I've been wanting to do that for a long time. So that's been pretty good. Like I have to admit, like
Mm,
I don't know why I've been procrastinating on that, but like my God, like it's just so good. It really just takes a bit of organization. But talking about when was looking up this topic, what comes next to accountability is courage. That
mm,
word courage
mm,
comes up. So
love
sometimes
it.
you just got to be brave just to take those steps to make those changes rather than to
Yes.
be, because I think you've said a few times today that you have to sort of stop wanting to or needing to fit into what others want from you.
Mm,
Like taking
mm,
a day off or actually being able to say, I don't need to be burnt out to
mm,
symbolize that I'm doing a good job.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. It's like don't lose yourself in it. And I watched a video the other day, and is so simple. So I feel like I want to reshare it. They said, how would you feel if you um, had if you wake up tomorrow and have $10 million? How would you feel? They're like, oh my god, I feel great. They said, would it change your life? I'm like, yeah. They go, okay. Tomorrow morning you can get up and you can have $10 million, but you can't have your life. What do you choose?
Yeah,
And I went, I choose my life. And they went, ah, interesting. So your life is worth more than $10 million,
it should,
basically.
shouldn't it? Really?
You know, that's what it's worth for you. And you can put any value. I probably haven't told the story right in terms of what was
No,
shared,
you
but
have. It's sort of like having
you
the
get the
why,
concept.
knowing what you want versus all the temptations and all the things that are going to lure you away from that path.
Yeah. And it's that state of saying, yes, there's accountability in all of this, right? And yes, go and get the results and go out on there and be accountable to yourself and to others, but also just check in with yourself, check in with other people, check with like how you're going, have the conversation to check in on the well-being of one another. Because if that fails, A, you're going to get sick, B, you're going to get burnt out, C, you're going to die. Right? These
Mm,
are the things that are, we're talking three major kind of things. But that's what's happening. And people ignore the sickness, right? And they
yeah,
block it out and they keep pushing. Oh, it's all right. I'll just, take a few tablets. I'll go and get a script. I'll go and get
there's a
some
lot of
drugs to
there's a
knock
lot of
it out,
ignoring going on. A lot of ignoring going on in general at the moment.
Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute. You're sick for a reason, right? Your body's shutting down on you, right? Your body's telling you, slow the fuck down. No, got to keep going, got to keep going, got to keep going, got to be accountable, got to do this. And it's like, do that, but also be accountable to your health and well-being and actually look after yourself
Yeah.
as well.
God, you're amazing. I love you so much. Like, you always talk. I know there are people listening, but I always feel like you're just talking to me directly. And I just sit here humbly just nodding, going, yes, yes, daddy, yes, daddy, yes, daddy, yes, sir.
Oh,
So,
it's
I
so
mean, again, thank you so much. I know you're a very busy man and you're so on demand. And for you to give us 30 minutes of your time every now and then is the best gift that I can ever receive from you. So, thank
my
you. And
pleasure, mate.
yeah, so that was great, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Joe. It's good to have a chat with you, mate.
Love you.
Love
All
you.
right, everybody, you've been listening to the Harder Shaft podcast. So don't forget, all our videos now are on YouTube, and they're also on any podcast platform that you choose to follow. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Until next time, keep playing with your shaft. Shaft.